The monitor glared back, mocking my efforts. Line after line of code, each a potential landmine. Seriously, Daniel? This code's a mess. Brian's voice, like nails on a chalkboard, sliced through the relative quiet of the open plan office. His words dripped with the usual arrogance, laced with a subtle yet unmistakable condescension that always managed to get under my skin. He was the CEO's kid, after all, and despite lacking any real demonstrable talent, he acted like he owned the entire damn place. He swaggered more than he walked, and his presence alone seemed to suck the air out of the room. I bit back a retort, the acidic words already bubbling in my throat. Pointless. Arguing with Brian was like arguing with a brick wall, frustrating, time-consuming, and ultimately utterly futile. He'd just explode if challenged, throwing threats and Daddy's name around like some sort of corporate Molotov cocktail. "It's test code, Brian," I said, forcing my voice to remain even professional. "New feature, not finished." "Test code needs to work, genius," Brian sneered, his lip curling slightly. "That's the whole point, isn't it? You always slack. This is what happens." Brian scowled, adjusting his obscenely expensive Rolex, which glinted obnoxiously in the bright California sun. It was a clear, cloudless day, the kind that lured tourists and tech bros alike to Silicon Valley. The sky was a perfect, almost aggressively blue, dotted with fluffy white clouds that looked like someone had painted them on with a giant brush. Picture perfect, almost painfully so. Under that damn postcard perfect sky, I was grinding away at Inex, a hot, rapidly growing startup. Inex was blowing up, attracting attention from all corners of the tech world. Next-gen apps, cutting-edge AI. They were the buzz. I was a member of the AI chatbot development team focusing on natural language processing. Elite team, top grads from MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, you name it. Ex-big tech engineers poached from Google, Amazon, Microsoft. High energy, constant innovation. It was a pressure cooker, but a stimulating one. I was constantly pushing myself, exploring new tech, brainstorming fresh ideas. Except for Brian, the exception that proved the rule. CEO's pull. Zero competence. Younger than me, but always looking down on me, mocking my work. He acted like a coding genius, the kind who could build a revolutionary AI in his sleep, but in reality, he couldn't code his way out of a paper bag. Bugs galore. Testing nightmares. Dad's shield protected him from any real consequences. I sighed inwardly. How long is this going to last? Resentment simmered, a low, persistent burn. Then, I had a breakthrough. I cracked it. A new algorithm that could increase the chatbot's accuracy exponentially. A game changer. This could potentially make Inex the top chatbot on the market. This could be huge. Excited, I prepared a presentation and pitched it to the team during our weekly meeting. "So, I've been working on a new approach to our NLP." Brian interrupted, a condescending smirk playing on his lips. "Daniel, that sounds ambitious," he said, drawing out the word ambitious with a patronizing tone. "Realistic, though? Can you actually implement something like that? Seems a bit theoretical for someone of your, shall we say, limited practical experience. Always shooting down my ideas, always trying to make me feel small." I started to explain the core logic, the elegant simplicity that underpinned the complex algorithm. Well, the initial test showed that. He cut me off. Again. "Actually, I've been working on something," he said, puffing out his chest slightly. "Simpler, more efficient, grounded in real-world applications. You'll see." Brian then launched into his explanation of his algorithm. As he spoke, a creeping unease began to settle over me. It sounded familiar, too familiar, like he had somehow stolen my pitch. My heart started to pound in my chest. I glanced around the room. The other team members were staring at Brian, seemingly mesmerized by his confident delivery. Was I crazy? Was I just being paranoid? "Wait a minute," I started to speak, my voice barely a whisper. That's my idea." Brian stopped speaking, his eyes narrowing. He turned his gaze on me. a cold, calculating look in his eyes. He scoffed. You? With your skills? Don't flatter yourself. You couldn't dream up something like this. I don't need to steal from you. He made it a joke, his words dripping with scorn, publicly humiliating me. The color rose in my cheeks. Anger burned, a white-hot fury threatening to consume me. He stole it, my idea, my work, my potential breakthrough, and I had no proof. I argued, tried to point out the similarities, the key concepts, but he just ignored me, continuing to boast about his work. The others stayed silent, afraid of Brian's connections. My effort trashed, my future jeopardized. I couldn't stand it. I'd expose him. Back at my desk, I tore into Brian's code, line by line. Frustration fueled my search. Then, bingo. My variable names, my comments, fragments of my logic, he lifted it, plain as day. A digital smoking gun. That evening, I confronted him in the office, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. This is my algorithm, Brian. You stole it. Brian leaned back in his expensive ergonomic chair, the picture of nonchalance. He sneered, a flicker of something akin to fear in his eyes. You didn't mess with my code, did you? Plant bugs? Trying to set me up? I exploded, years of pent-up frustration erupting. Your code is my idea. I have proof. Stop lying. It's right there in the comments. I pointed at a section of the code on the screen. Brian's eyes darted around nervously before returning to me, hardening again. A glint of steel appeared in his eyes. You want to quit, Daniel? Pack your things and leave now? Or should I have a chat with my dad? Maybe explain to him why you're disrupting the team. The threat hung in the air, thick and heavy. I stood my ground, my fists clenched. I would expose him. He wouldn't get away with this. He couldn't use his father's power to steal my work. I was ready to fight, to expose him, to prove myself, to get justice. The Brian conflict ate at me, a constant gnawing stress. His arrogance, his blatant lies, the sheer, unadulterated abuse of his daddy's power, it disgusted me to my core. I started having trouble sleeping. The image of his smug face burned into the back of my eyelids. I kept grinding, though, putting in the hours, refusing to break under the pressure, refusing to let him win. My work was getting noticed. The other team members, the real engineers, were starting to see through Brian's facade. My reputation was slowly, painstakingly building. But Brian wouldn't acknowledge it, not even a little. Constant digs, subtle put-downs disguised as helpful suggestions. He'd casually dismiss my ideas in meetings, then later present them as his own. It was a constant, infuriating game of corporate theft. One day, the Enix office buzzed with an almost palpable energy. Everyone was practically vibrating with excitement. Sales charts plastered the main monitor, a towering display of green bars surging upward like a digital rocket. Confidence was everywhere, practically radiating off the employees. Did you hear? We landed the partnership. That corporation. I overheard a group of engineers chatting near the water cooler. Global expansion, here we come. A big leap into the global market. That's what the voices said. Full of hushed excitement and nervous anticipation. Enix, signing with a tech giant, a deal that had been years in the making. Our chatbot worldwide. Huge potential. This could put Enix on the map. But there was always a but, wasn't there? A catch. The deal hinged on a new software project, a tight deadline, fast turnaround. Insanely difficult, developing next-gen AI, creating natural, human-like conversations, pushing beyond the limitations of current bots. It was a moonshot, a Hail Mary. Who's leading it? Brian, right? CEO's kid. Perfect choice. The engineers' voices, laced with a mix of hope and cynicism, were almost a chorus. I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. Brian leading? Disaster. His algorithm was my theft, and his actual coding abilities were questionable, to put it mildly. He'd likely leverage his father's influence to snag the leadership position, and he'd probably succeed. I was right. Brian got the nod. He sauntered over to my desk, a self-satisfied smirk plastered across his face. Daniel, You're leading the new project. He smirked, the expression making my blood boil. Huh? Me? Shock slammed into me, followed by a wave of disbelief. He wanted me to lead? Why? Yeah, you, Brian continued, his voice dripping with forced sincerity. Best skills on the team. I mean, everyone knows it, right? Best chance to make this thing a success. He made it sound genuine. Almost. But I felt something slimy underneath, a lurking malevolence that set my teeth on edge. I'm still new. I started to refuse, my mind racing. What was he planning? Don't sweat it, Daniel, Brian interrupted, clapping me on the shoulder with a force that almost knocked me off my chair. I'll support you. You got this. It'll be a great learning experience. He pumped me up, but it felt off, hollow. Is he setting me up? Sabotaging me? Making me the scapegoat? I saw the trap. The pieces clicked into place. He wanted me to fail, to take the fall if the project crashed and burned. My guard went up, every instinct screaming danger. Hidden meanings, concealed intentions. He was playing a game, and I was the pawn. I'd expose him. I'd prove myself. I'd turn the tables. I threw myself into the project, determined to succeed no matter the cost. Brian showed his hand quickly. The sabotage started almost immediately, subtle at first, then escalating with alarming speed. Daniel, this has to work, he said, looming over my desk. Immense pressure. Don't screw up. The entire company is riding on this. You don't want to let everyone down, do you? He tried to crack me, destabilize my confidence, hoping for a mistake, a slip-up he could exploit. Then he started the squeeze. Budget's tight, he announced during the next project meeting, his eyes fixed on me. Cut the fat. Manage things carefully. He slashed resources, restricted access to key development tools, and reassigned several of my team members to other projects, hoping for delays, resource drain, making the project impossible to complete. And then came the final blow. He piled on the demands, adding new features and requirements with reckless abandon. This new security feature is absolutely essential, Daniel, he insisted, tapping his finger impatiently on the table. I need it finished by next week, please. Unrealistic deadlines. Weeks of complex development work squeezed into mere days, hoping for rushed, buggy code, hoping I'd buckle under the pressure. I saw it all, underestimating me, setting me up to fail. I needed to outsmart him, stay calm, play the game. But I knew deep down that this wasn't just a game anymore. This was a war. To beat Brian, I needed more than just a plan. I needed a weapon, a secret weapon to deceive him, lead the project to success. And I had a feeling I knew just where to find it. Brian's schemes escalated daily, an relentless torrent of corporate sabotage. It was as if he was throwing every dirty trick he could think of at me, hoping something would finally break through and shatter my resolve. Constant sabotage, petty and grand, chipping away at my sanity, one tiny annoyance at a time. He was a master of microaggressions, making me question my own abilities, my own sanity. I can't take this much longer, I muttered to myself alone in my apartment, the words echoing in the sterile, sparsely furnished space. The walls seemed to close in on me, the weight of the project, the pressure from Brian, pressing down on me like a physical burden. If this continues, he'll win. He'll grind me down, break me, and take all the credit. I tried logic, reason, trying to analyze his tactics, to find a weakness, an opening. But his schemes were beyond my expectations, more cunning and devious than I could have imagined. He seemed to know my every move, anticipating my plans, always one step ahead, slowly pushing me to the edge, making me doubt everything. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, the fluorescent light casting harsh shadows across my face. The man staring back was tired, worn down, haggard. Circles under my eyes, a permanent furrow in my brow. I barely recognized myself. I needed to escape, to break free from Brian's web, to beat him at his own game, to make the project work, not just for Inex, but for myself, to prove that I was capable, that I wasn't just some pushover he could walk all over. I started plotting, not just a plan, but a counter-strategy, a complete overhaul of my approach. See through his lies, identify and exploit his weaknesses, outmaneuver him at every turn, crush his expectations. deliver results so spectacular, so undeniable, that he couldn't possibly take credit for them. Determined, fueled by a potent cocktail of anger and desperation, I worked late into the night, hunched over my laptop, formulating a strategy for the project's success, poring over documentation, sketching out diagrams, burning the midnight oil. He wanted to play dirty? Fine, I could play dirty too. He was trying to drown me in impossible tasks, hoping I'd crack under the pressure, make a mistake, give him the ammunition he needed. He was choking off resources, starving the project of the tools and personnel it needed to succeed. He was demanding deadlines that were not only unrealistic, but downright ludicrous, designed to push me to the breaking point. I analyzed it all, dissected his tactics, searching for a weakness, a flaw in his plan. Brian's underestimating me. He thinks I'll fold, that I'll crumble under the pressure, that I'm not smart enough, not tough enough, to see through his schemes. He expects me to fail. But I can deceive him. I can make this work. I just need the right approach. A plan formed in my mind, slowly at first, then with increasing clarity. Turn his tactics against him. Use his own weapons against him. Defy his expectations. Outsmart him with results so spectacular, so undeniably superior, that he'd be left speechless. I decided to take advantage of those insane, impossible deadlines. Develop a new method, a faster, more efficient way to deliver the project. Something groundbreaking. Something completely different from the conventional approach. The old way was waterfall. Detailed specifications up front, meticulously planned design phases, then development, testing, deployment. A linear, rigid process. Slow, inflexible, prone to delays and cost overruns. I'd ditch that antiquated system. Go agile. Embrace the chaos. No detailed specifications up front. Just a working prototype. Get user feedback. Iterate. Adapt. Improve. Faster development. User-friendly software. Reflecting user needs, adapting to changing requirements. Agile was the answer. I was convinced that by adopting this approach, I could meet Brian's unreasonable deadlines, deliver superior software, prove him wrong. I steeled myself and presented my plan to Brian. I want to ditch the waterfall method. I want to go agile. He frowned, his brow furrowing in confusion. Agile? What's that? Some kind of new age management mumbo jumbo? You never done agile before. What makes you think you can pull it off now? Skepticism dripped from his every word. Clinging to the old ways, resistant to anything new or innovative, he was a dinosaur in a digital world. Agile's faster, Brian, I explained, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. More user-friendly, more adaptable. I've studied it extensively. I know what I'm doing. I can handle it. And it's the only way we're going to meet your deadlines. I sold the benefits, emphasizing my knowledge and experience with the methodology, hoping to allay his concerns, or at least to convince him I knew what I was doing. He hesitated, his eyes narrowed, suspicion clouding his features. Fine, try it. But don't screw it up, Daniel. This project is too important. If this fails, it's on you. And believe me, I'll make sure you pay the price. Reluctantly, he agreed, his words laced with a veiled threat. A flicker of distrust still lingered on his face. A subtle warning that he'd be watching my every move, waiting for me to slip up. To really screw with Brian, to truly blindside him, I decided to take an even bolder action, a more audacious risk. I formed a secret team, a clandestine operation, to deceive him, escape his constant surveillance, and deliver a product that would blow his mind. I handpicked the best agile engineers, the most innovative and dedicated members of the team, instructed them, develop in secret, evade Brian's watchful eye, operate under the radar. I gathered my secret team in a quiet corner of the office after hours, carefully closing the blinds and lowering the lights. I explained Brian's schemes, laying bare his manipulative tactics and his blatant attempts to sabotage the project, convinced them of my plan, showed them the evidence. He's setting us up, I said, my voice low and urgent. He wants us to fail so he can take the credit for himself. That's why we have to develop in secret, avoiding his radar. We have a responsibility to outsmart him, to deliver a great product, to show him what we're capable of. I appealed to their ambition, their sense of justice, their desire to prove themselves. They understood, they empathized, they agreed, they were in. We worked together, secretly developing late into the night, fueled by coffee, adrenaline, and a burning desire to succeed. Evading Brian's gaze, communicating in hushed whispers, coordinating our efforts with military precision, operating like a well-oiled machine. And we crushed it, exceeded all expectations, developed high-quality software in record time. An elegant, efficient, user-friendly chatbot that was not only functional, but innovative and engaging. Then came the user testing, the moment of truth. The feedback blew us all away. Amazing usability, unprecedented functionality, jaw-dropping innovation. This software is incredible. One user gushed, his eyes wide with surprise. It's like talking to a real person. It actually understands what I'm saying. Rave reviews poured in, one after another. The industry buzz began to build, reaching a fever pitch. NX, thanks to our efforts, was rising to a new level, a level that even Brian couldn't ignore. We had not just met expectations, we'd obliterated them. We crushed Brian's petty schemes, delivering a project so successful it couldn't be ignored. My reputation soared within the real team, those who valued skill over nepotism. But Brian? He couldn't swallow the truth, the fact that he'd been outsmarted. He wouldn't acknowledge it. So he plotted again, a desperate attempt to steal the spotlight. Set me up for a spectacular fall. Daniel, yeah, the project worked. Brian said during the post-launch debrief, his tone dismissive, his eyes darting around the room as if afraid to make eye contact. But it wasn't you. Don't get a big head. It was a team effort. We all pulled our weight. He minimized my contribution, framing the success as a collective achievement, subtly downplaying my crucial role in leading the secret development team. He was attempting to isolate me, to diminish my value in the eyes of the others. He whispered rumors behind my back, planting seeds of doubt and resentment, damaging my credibility, poisoning the well. Daniel's always bragging about his accomplishments. I overheard him telling one of the junior developers during lunch. He acts like he did everything himself. He doesn't appreciate his teammates. It's all about him. Brian started subtly sabotaging the code, planting insidious bugs that caused intermittent glitches. A line of code here, an incorrect variable there, deliberately interfering with the stability and performance of the very system I'd helped build. He was a viper in the grass, striking when you least expected it. Daniel, we got a bug, he announced during a critical demo with a potential investor, his voice dripping with false concern. A pretty major one, needs fixing as soon as possible, or the whole project's on the line. He feigned helplessness, shifting the responsibility, setting the stage for a public humiliation. He exaggerated my mistakes, blowing minor glitches out of proportion, repeatedly questioned my abilities in front of others. He weaponized every small error, using them as evidence of my supposed incompetence. He was chipping away at my confidence, eroding my sense of self-worth. "You're really an engineer, Daniel?" he sneered after I struggled to fix a particularly nasty bug he had introduced. "Can't you even avoid basic errors? Maybe you're in the wrong line of work, trying to shatter my resolve, to break me down completely." But I saw through it. I understood the hidden intentions behind his actions. His tactics were predictable, transparent. His insecurity was his greatest weakness. He's setting me up again, sabotaging the project, planting bugs, making me the fall guy. He wants me fired, wants me gone. He won't get away with it. I realized Brian's scheme and knew I needed to act cautiously, strategically. I couldn't afford to make any mistakes. To fight back, I started gathering evidence, meticulously documenting every instance of sabotage, every false accusation, every whispered rumor. I was determined to expose his lies, to reveal his true nature, to show the world the kind of person he really was. I tore into the buggy code, spending hours poring over every line, searching for the telltale signs of deliberate manipulation, and I found it. Traces of his deliberate bug insertion, skillfully hidden, but not undetectable. His fingerprints were all over it. I knew he was spreading rumors, so I discreetly recorded his conversations, capturing his slanderous remarks, preserving them as irrefutable evidence. To report Brian's behavior, I knew I had to skip him entirely and go straight to HR. I suspected the CEO would cover for him, protect his son at all costs. So going to the top was pointless. I needed someone objective, someone who would investigate the claims fairly. The stakes were too high. I walked into the HR manager's office, my heart pounding in my chest, my hands clutching the carefully assembled evidence. "I need to report that Brian is sabotaging my project," I stated, my voice trembling slightly, but firm. "He's planting bugs in the code, spreading rumors about me, and generally creating a hostile work environment." I accused Brian of sabotage and presented the evidence. The HR manager listened intently, her expression growing increasingly grim as I detailed the extent of Brian's wrongdoing. I carefully explained my suspicions, presented the code, the recordings, all the evidence I had painstakingly gathered. "This bug was deliberately planted by Brian," I said, pointing to a specific line of code. "He's trying to make my project fail. He wants to take the credit for himself." The HR manager nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "I understand the seriousness of this, Daniel," she said, her voice grave. "I'll launch an immediate investigation. I need you to provide me with all the code and recordings." The investigation took several long, anxious days, but eventually the truth came to light. HR uncovered enough evidence to confirm Brian's actions. They interviewed other team members, analyzed the code, reviewed the documentation. They found proof of his deliberate sabotage, his manipulation, his lies. The CEO was furious. He couldn't deny the evidence, couldn't sweep it under the rug. Despite Brian being his son, he had no choice but to fire him. The company's reputation was at stake. After Brian's termination, I was asked to take on a more significant leadership role within the company, a position of real power and responsibility. It was tempting, but I hesitated. The culture of the company had been damaged. The trust had been broken. I knew that Inex wasn't somewhere I could continue to grow, where I could truly make a difference. The taint of Brian's actions, the CEO's complicity, lingered in the air. I thanked them for the opportunity, expressed my gratitude for their support, but said I was moving on. I needed a fresh start, a clean slate. After leaving Inex, I contacted the media, the tech blogs, and news outlets. I told them everything about Brian's plagiarism, his sabotage, his abuse of power. I laid it all bare, determined to expose the situation fully, to shine a light on the toxic culture that had allowed it to fester. The media ran with the story, and the fallout was swift and brutal. Brian was publicly shamed, his reputation destroyed. He became a pariah in the tech community, unable to find work, unable to escape the stain of his actions. The scandal reached the CEO, his own position becoming untenable. The board of directors pressured him to resign. He had failed to protect the company, failed to address the wrongdoing, failed to maintain an ethical environment. I exposed Brian's wrongdoing and achieved justice through my efforts and courage. I uncovered the company's corruption, exposed the toxic culture, and ultimately helped to protect it from itself. After the dust settled, after the media frenzy died down, after Brian was gone and Inex was reeling, I took some time to think, to reflect. What next? Where do I go from here? Silicon Valley, the land of dreams, the mecca of ambition, a place that could swallow you whole if you weren't careful. A tinge of sadness washed over me, a wave of nostalgia for the long nights I'd spent wrestling with code, fueled by caffeine and ambition, dreaming of success at Inex. The camaraderie with the real engineers, the thrill of innovation, the belief that we were building something truly groundbreaking. All of that was gone now, tainted by Brian's actions, forever stained by the corruption I'd uncovered. But also a powerful surge of pride in standing up for what was right, pride in fighting against injustice, pride in refusing to back down, even when the odds were stacked against me. Brian was gone, his career in tatters, his reputation in ruins. He'd been a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers of nepotism and unchecked power. I'd been forced out, branded as a troublemaker, a whistleblower, someone who couldn't be trusted to play the corporate game. But I didn't regret my actions, not for a single moment. I'd acted according to my conscience, following my moral compass, fighting with everything I had to protect the company, to uphold the truth. I needed a new job. Finding work in Silicon Valley was proving to be more difficult than I anticipated. Many companies saw me as a liability, a risk. They were afraid of the spotlight, afraid of the disruption I might bring, hesitated to hire me. But I refused to quit, to give up. I believed in myself, in my abilities. I was confident in my skills, my knowledge, my experience. I was determined to continue taking on new challenges, to push myself to the limit, to prove that I was more than just a whistleblower. I decided to take a leap of faith, to use my experience, both the good and the bad, to start my own company, to build something from the ground up, to create a company where innovation thrived, where ethics were paramount, where talent was valued above all else. I believe that by starting my own company, I could freely exercise my abilities, unleash my creativity, and contribute to society in a meaningful way. I could create a workplace where honesty and integrity were prized, where employees were empowered to speak up without fear of reprisal. I spent months crafting a business plan, securing funding, and recruiting a team of talented and like-minded individuals. I was determined to make my company an ethical one, a place where integrity and transparency were paramount. Different from NX, the antithesis of Brian's reign of terror. Transparent, no wrongdoing, an ethical company, contribute to society. I made that vow in my heart, a solemn promise to myself and to my future employees. I would create a company that was worthy of their trust, a company that made a real difference in the world. At my company, I embarked on the development of new AI technologies, pushing the boundaries of what was possible, exploring uncharted territory. I believed in the potential of AI to benefit humanity, to solve some of the world's most pressing problems, and I was passionate about developing new AI tools that could make a real impact. I launched a project at my company to use AI technology to address social problems, to create solutions that could alleviate suffering and improve lives. I wanted to use AI to address social issues such as poverty, hunger, and environmental problems. I wanted to leverage the power of technology to create a more equitable and sustainable world. I want to grow my company into one that contributes to society. I aim to make the world a better place through my company. Under the clear blue Silicon Valley sky, I took a step towards a new future, a future filled with promise and potential. By starting my own company, by building a team of talented and dedicated individuals, by pursuing innovative AI technologies, and by remaining committed to my ethical principles, I was able to fully utilize my abilities, to unleash my creativity, and to contribute to society in a meaningful way. By exposing Brian's wrongdoing, by standing up to injustice, by refusing to back down, I was able to forge a new path, a path filled with purpose and meaning. I learned that wrongdoing should never be tolerated, that silence is complicity, that courage is contagious. I resolved to always stand up, to fight against injustice, to uphold what was right, no matter the cost. I wanted to use my experience to inspire others, to encourage them to speak out against injustice, to fight for what they believe in, to make a difference in the world. I believed in the potential of AI to benefit society and was passionate about developing new AI technologies. I wanted to grow my company into one that contributes to society. I aim to make the world a better place through my company. Under the clear blue sky of Silicon Valley, I took a step towards a new future. A future that, this time, I would help to build